Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Our Community. I am your host, Kevin Young, and I'm joined with my good friend, Rob March. Rob, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Rob, you obviously people know who you are, of course, with your business in town with Megatrends. But there's another side of you that that I think people are starting to get to recognize as well. You've got a podcast out, of course, March On, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that. But we're seeing a motivational side of you that's, I think, in terms of publicly relatively new. And it all started with with your first didn't start with your first podcast, but you talked about a lot of this in your first podcast, and you shared a bit about your life growing up. And I'm wondering if you can share a bit of that with us today. A little bit about Rob March. You were younger, growing up. I think you were over in the North Shore, and what led to you being who you are today.
Yeah, I'm a metals guy. I'm a metals man, and we grew up on. We were from over home. Everybody used to say, without the H, of course. And
Yeah.
I think I did that pretty well at that time.
Yeah.
So basically, growing up in metals everything was pretty normal. Everything was okay. But then at 15 years old, my father got hit by a train and got killed.
Right.
And that really made me take a deep into a bit of a dark area, I guess you wanna say, because I don't like really talking about things like depression and that kind of stuff. But when your father gets hit by a train and you're kind of left wondering why. And I guess, when I look back at it now, looking at the age I am now, when I got on the speaker circuit a few years ago, looking back at it and the age I am now, being 53, is things happen for a reason, I
Right.
guess, and things, if you don't take lessons from it, I guess it just is going to tear you up inside.
Sure.
Right. So I mean, I think that's the first place you got to start with is what's it doing inside, right?
Right.
And with me, when Dia got killed, it was I was 15. You're pretty vulnerable at 15, and my mother was a real trooper, and I mean she was in the grieving process, but I mean a lot of people knew my mom, and it was quite motivational just to watch her go through what she was going through, and listen to her at night weeping silently. And
Right.
not really making that grief anybody else's issue, And I remember right after the funeral when Dad got killed, so his brother was camping throughout the province, and so people were having a hard time getting a hold of him, the RCMP and stuff. And when he finally showed up, it was 3 days after Dad had passed.
Oh wow.
So I mean, he was going around doing his camping thing. Life was happy, and everything else was going bad back home. So when he finally did pull in the driveway and he asked me, was it true? Of course I said, yeah, it's true.
Right.
And that's when it hit me hard, right?
Right.
Realizing then, it's still hard to talk about, honestly, because
I'd imagine.
your mind goes right back to when you're 15. So you're not a man of 53 talking about this, you're a child of 15. And that's really how the psychology works of it. And I learned that over the years, that when you reach back, we call afterburn. When you reach back, you grab for that afterburn. It hits you hard,
Right.
So, but anyway, after that, things just got different. It was real different. A lot of Dad's friends, Dad's buddies, and I look back at it and I say, I lost my dad at 15, but I gained a lot of fathers at 15, right? A lot of father figures. Ralph, Dad's best friend, Don, Dad, another best friend of Dad's, Elwood. They all kept checking in on the family and making sure we were okay, and that was pretty important.
Yeah.
And I realized then that people will come out to your rescue, and it's just a natural thing to do, is to help people. And really that's where I got my start, realizing that I like helping people.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's actually it's kind of a message I always try to remind people of. When we go through something difficult in life, we tend to feel like we're alone, and I think a lot of that will boil down to it's hard when we're going through such emotions to accept that other people might understand. Therefore, you isolate yourself because you think they don't. And I think it's great that you're talking about these people were there, and I think that we often had to remind ourselves that there are others and there are people around.
Yeah.
And they obviously seem to have helped you a lot when you were
Yeah,
younger.
yeah, and it wasn't really, they never said, let's go see Robbie, and let's go help Robbie, let's go help Daryl, let's go help Anita, let's go help Lil. It wasn't like that, right?
No.
It was just the goodness of their hearts, right, that they were doing this. And life is not supposed to be easy, man.
No.
That's just the way it is. It's never going to be easy. Things happen. Happens for a reason. You might not know it now, but it will be in the future. I mean, I really believe in my heart of hearts that, you know, like I was in the truck with Dad that day,
Right.
right? So I mean, he had dropped me off. Mom thought he was picking me up, and he was picking me up. You know, I mean, he dropped by the mailbox, and I got in. Right, I was actually walking back from the park that day.
Right.
We were playing ball. I got in and we chatted. Everything was normal. We got to Riverside Drive, and then he sort of just said, you know, there's really not much for you to do up there, and he changed his mind. And I said, well, that's okay. I'll go down to Student Manpower, see if there's anything on the go for a summer job. So I went that way, and he went his way, and that was it. There was
Right.
no more Dad after that, you know, and life just poof, went bang. But when I look back at it, I said, you know, and when I speak to like 500 kids last year in St. John's, you know, at a keynote, you know, I know that I'm there for a reason. Like, so it was a greater good, I guess, you know, and everybody's got a gift inside. And someone gave me when I went another dark time I went through a few years back when me and my ex-wife split up. Someone gave me a plaque. Right, it's amazing because I had all this knowledge and all this stuff, and I just came from one of the best motivational speaking circuits in the world, you know, with Sandler Training, and best business training ever, best sales training ever, and you know, and someone came into my office, just give me a little sticker to stick on the wall, and it said, you were given this life because you're strong enough to live it.
Right.
Right? If you calculate the chances of you being born, it's 1 in trillions, right? 1 in trillions. Right, so I mean, we all got a gift, you know, but sometimes we just give up looking for it.
Yes.
Sometimes we just bail out, you know, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. It does. And so you know, obviously have this, you know, hard moments in your life, of course. You mentioned your father and so on, but you're a father now.
I am.
And so I'm kind of curious, Rob, if you don't mind sharing, having the father you had, how much of an influence of him as a father do you have with your children now? Do you remember much of what your dad was like with you growing up, and does it pour over into you?
Oh
being
my
a dad
God, do
now?
I remember? You know, I think when someone dies that young, and when you're young like that, you know, you kind of try to hold on to the memories.
Yeah.
A little bit more, you know, because like there was, I guess it happened when I was so young that I just never took it for granted.
Right.
Right. So those memories. So I've kind of, wrote them down. I've you know, like talked about them, and whenever I see someone that Dad knew, I kind of try to get a story or something about what he was like.
Yeah.
Now I knew what he was like, but I didn't know what he was like when he was at a party. Like I'm the first guy to pick up the guitar at a party. Like I'm the first guy to, you know, to.
Well, you knew the dad, right? You didn't know the other side
Yeah,
of dad.
exactly,
I guess that a lot of others would've.
exactly. So
Yeah.
where to bring up my kids? Let me just say, I never really had an interest to play guitar.
Right.
All right, until Dad got killed, right? And I mean, I was always around it. I took it for granted, right? And when I turned 17, I just looked at his guitar one day in the corner, and I mean, he had died when I was 15. Looked at his guitar just sitting in the corner. I said, you know what? I should learn how to play it. And that playing guitar made me more friends over the years than you could just count. It's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that's one thing it gave me. I guess another thing it gave me too was don't be too involved in what other people think of you.
Right.
All right, and where that came was one night I was out sliding. I was about 13 years old, I guess, and you know, the kids fight. Let's face it, right? They
do,
fight,
yeah.
right? So I mean, at our age, I mean, you know, you beat the living crap out of someone, you know, and if you know, and you just did, and you get the icy mitts in the face.
Yeah.
So we're sliding on a place called Tucker's Hill. So I went home and I said to Dad, I said, no one wants to play with me. And I was in one of those sucky moments, you know, like everybody was picking on me, and everybody was bullying me. I just didn't like it. So anyway, I went home and he said, well, he had a paint shop behind the house because he painted signs for a living, so he was self-employed also. And so when he was painting signs, he used to have this paint shop and this potbelly stove. We'd cut the wood literally this big for the potbelly stove, right?
Yeah.
And so when I told him, he said, what are you doing home so early? It's like 6:30, right? I mean, we're allowed to go slide until about 8:30, right? 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
And I said, nobody likes me. He said, nobody likes you. I said, nobody likes me. Well, he says, time for a bucket talk. I said, a bucket talk? I'm thinking, and Dad was a little bit flamboyant too, right? I mean, let me tell you, like he was quite the character. It's time for a bucket talk. I said, okay, and I'm thinking in my own head, what's a bucket talk? So he went over and he like his rags and paper towels, that kind of stuff he used for wiping up the paint, keeping it in a 5-gallon bucket.
Right.
All right, so he flipped the bucket over without wasting anything, flipped it over and he tapped on top, you sit here, right? So I sat on the bucket and he went over and he used to keep his boat in the back of the shop, and he picked up another 5-gallon bucket, he'd come over and he sat on the other bucket. Now he said, tell me what's going on. I said, well, nobody likes me. Like, you know, people are talking about me, nobody likes me. They're fighting with me down there, I'm down sliding, they're fighting me. He said, okay. He said, when I was your age, I didn't think anybody liked me either. And I was like, really? Wow, good. Someone knows how I feel, right? He said, when I turned about 30, I realized that I really didn't care if anybody liked me. And now at my age, he said, I'm 40, I really don't think anybody was really thinking about me when I was thinking that they didn't like me.
Right.
So I'm looking at him thinking, what's the point? Like, I really don't understand this. Like, what's the point? So I said to him point blank, I don't understand. What's the point? Well, do you think they're down there now thinking about you? Sliding? I said, no. He said, right. So put your boots back on, get back on the hill, and go for a slide. We spend too much time dwelling and wondering about what's going on in someone else's head and not enough time dealing with what's going on in their own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and
that,
that's
of
big.
course, yeah,
That's
and
big.
that could lead to a lot of, you know, stress, undue stress.
Oh my God,
Right.
dude.
So you've gone from that, of course, obviously it sounds like he was a wonderful man, a wonderful father, and a good influence.
Yeah.
And you've gone from, you know, having him in your life, no longer in your life. You finished school afterward. It must have been difficult, I'm sure, kind of immediately to go back to school. And
Failed
you know,
grade 10.
Did you?
Yeah, so I didn't really fail. I lost my physics, math, and English
Oh, wow.
in grade 10. And that was the year Dad got killed. So
Yeah.
that was in 1983. I was in grade 10, or level 1 it was at the time. It was new credit system just came in. But of course I couldn't fail because they pushed me on, right?
Right.
So I was going back then so I had a rebel year the year Dad got killed. So like that whole year was a bit of a, I had my hard case year in grade 10.
Right.
And then Dad got killed on 27th of June, so then in September I'm going back to school, you know, without a father, and you know, with 1 credit to spare.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I
Nah.
guess I better pull my socks up. And I remember my mother saying that exact same phrase to me when I was going back, pull your socks up, because no
Yeah.
one's going to do this, only you.
Right.
I can't do this for you.
And so what did you do after school then? Did you post-secondary?
Yeah, I did Min-Tech in Stephenville, mineral technology. So diploma technology in mining, basically.
Yeah.
I worked a couple years at that. And I was out in BC when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
So then she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was working with Public Works Canada as a grade inspector, actually.
Right.
And I worked at Hope Brook Mine.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went out to out west, and then she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then it was time to come home. She was terminal. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, that was a bit of an eye opener. Also, if you don't mind me talking about that for a second.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Dad was the I guess the purpose side of me. Okay, my mother gives me the courage side of me.
Right.
All right, because I mean, I remember when she was diagnosed and we went to the hospital and she had a mastectomy done, and it was in the lymph nodes. So then she called the 3 kids in after she had talked to the doctor, and she said, well, looks like we got a little fight on our hands. Like, there was no pity, there was no nothing, like, I'm gonna beat this thing. And it's amazing the brain, the power a human has got when they're put to the wall.
Right.
Right? And the intestinal guts, I guess, is as raw as that can,
Right.
you know, when you're down, right? And she, happily to say, I mean, she was given at the time 6 months without chemo, 2 years with chemo, and she was 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it went away, and it was just crazy, you know, what things that was happening, and
Right.
and how much she just fought tooth and nail, right? But at
Right.
the last, I mean, she had passed. But again, like, she never made her sickness anybody else's burden. She didn't talk about it very much. She didn't want to hear the words very much.
Right.
She didn't want to be pitied, right? She just said, you know, like, it is what it is. You know, like,
Right.
I'm normal. Look at me like I'm normal. Just I'm the same person. And I think that's what kept her going, was like she didn't lose her identity at all. Like
Right.
she was still strong, she was still able, she was still independent, she was still faithful, she was still full of courage, she was still that same person, you know,
Sure.
that was, you know, getting up in the morning and putting 2 feet on the floor and being grateful that the day was going to bring her nothing but, you know, good things and happiness.
Right.
And that's really how she lived her life.
So it sounds like you had these two really great examples to live by, but that unfortunately seemed to have been taken away a little earlier.
Too early, yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened then? I mean, you were working. You come home because you found out, of course, as you said, your mom had breast cancer. What changed for you then? Because obviously, I don't think right away you started a business.
No, I went in the insurance financial planning business. So I spent just about 10 years doing that. I think you and I have talked about that. And then my son was 7 years old, and I went home one night to help him with his homework. Or actually, that's not right. That's not correct. I happened to be home one night.
Right.
I think you were spending a little bit of while in the financial planning business. It's a business you have to be out at people's tables
Yes.
in the nighttime.
Yeah.
Right. So and I was out a lot.
Right.
I was out a lot. I mean, I wasn't on the road as such, but I was on the road because I wasn't home. So
Right.
it doesn't really matter. You know, you're going home at 12 o'clock at night. You're going to bed. You're still on the road. You're not seeing your kids.
No.
And he was about 7 years old, I guess, and I was helping with his homework one night, and I said to him, and he was a bit of an hyper kid. He had some ADHD, ADD problems and stuff, but we choose not to medicate him. We choose to just, you know, work with him, and, you know, as parents. And I said to him one night, I said, Corley, you got to sit down and do your homework.
Right.
You got to sit still and do your homework. And he said, I said, we're always after do your homework. He said, Dad, he said, you're never after me to do my homework. I said, yeah. I said, I am. He said, Dad, you're not. He said, you're never here.
Mm. That's kind of a hard phrase to hear, isn't it?
Wow. And he was 7. And so the next morning, or that night, I wrote a letter of resignation that night.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was next. We had a new baby. My daughter then was 6 months old. And I walked into my boss's office next day at Industrial Alliance, and I passed a letter of resignation. And he said, what's this? I said, I'm resigning. He said, why are you resigning? I said, you know what? I said, Dan, when I visit my father's grave, it says loving dad, loving dad and loving husband. Mine will say, great insurance rep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And it just wasn't important to me anymore.
No.
And I said, you know what? It's in my heart not to continue as doing that. And I was missing my sons growing up, right? And we had a brand new baby. So I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to do something different. So that's when we started Megatrends with 2 embroidering machines.
So I'm just kind of curious how that started then, because it seems like kind of something totally off the rockers from what what you did in school. Your father painted signs. He didn't do this. You didn't mention what your mom did for a living, but I'm assuming it didn't have anything to do with embroidery. So what led to starting this embroidery thing?
Well, you know, I said to my wife, and she had just lost her job with the Western Star because they went publisherless. All right, so she was publisher assistant, so her job just became redundant. So she knew I resigned, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to do roughneck program. I'm going to go across the Gulf, and I'm going to go out west. I'm never going to see my kids again. I don't want to deal with my son doing homework. I'm just going to run away. And no, that's not really what I was thinking. So anyway, I was doing some photography and from a previous life with a client, and she had 2 embroidery machines, and she had Megatrends. Started actually, it was in the Good House building. Okay. And she just said to me, "You should buy 2 embroidery machines." And I said, "Why?"
Yeah.
And it's quite funny actually. She says, "Well, you know something." She said, "It's not really not like the sign business that you grew up in, right?" And I was thinking, you know what? It is the sign business.
It is, yeah.
It is the sign business. So I said, but a sign's on clothes. I remember my father saying one time, you know what? There's only one thing better than a sign. One that can talk.
Right.
Make sense? Right? So you're wearing a logo T-shirt, you're wearing a logo cap. You know, your advertising is there, doing the advertising, but also it can talk. Right? Where'd you get the cap? Well, I bought that. I got that from Rogers. They gave me a cap last week. Oh, Rogers, I don't have Rogers. All of a sudden, now that conversation starts.
Exactly.
And that's really how promotional apparel works.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole branding thing. So yeah. So I mean, I just Anyway, I resigned from the insurance company, and so between that and this, when Karen Matthews was her name, told me asked me if I wanted to buy those embroidering machines, I said, no, that's silly. Like, like, why would I want to buy 2 embroidery machines? So it's just kind of like science, but I kind of just brushed it off, sort of thing.
Sure.
And then a week or 10 days later, the editor of the Western Star came to our house and told my wife that her job was made redundant, and now we're like incomeless because I was on commission, of course, in the insurance business. I was on commission, and I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, he left. She's upset. She's crying. She's, oh my God, what are we gonna do, right? So I give her a hug and I said, don't worry about it. She said, what do you mean, don't worry about it? We're gonna buy 2 embroidery machines. And I mean, she was pretty mad.
Yeah.
She was pretty mad. She was like, what? We're gonna
Right.
buy? What do you mean?
Right. Well, it wasn't magical beans, at least, right?
It wasn't magical beans.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I mean, and there was lots of naysayers.
Right.
Let me tell you, there was lots of naysayers. Like my mom had passed at that time, and so I mean, there was lots of people said, don't be so stupid, don't be so silly, you don't want to do that, right?
Right.
And you know what? I learned at that point that people can hold you back. People can hold you back because they love you so much. They don't want to see you make a mistake, but at the same time, they're holding you back.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to close the door on one thing, but then when you're trying to open that door or trying to close that door, there's someone behind it with their foot, and their foot is jammed in the door. All right? And that's your friends and family sometimes.
Yeah.
They will hold you back. Right? It's because they love you. They're not holding you back because they want to hold you back. They're holding you back because they love you.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to like pull the door out and just slam. And just beat their foot off to get it out of the way, right? So I just said, you know what? I'm doing this. What have I got to lose? I'm doing it.
Right.
I've been in sales all my life. I love people. I'm just going to go around and hug everybody and sell some caps.
Yeah. Wow. And obviously it worked out.
17 years later.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of that has led to, because now, while you still have your business, you're also a bit of a motivational speaker, aren't you?
Yeah.
So what's that like?
What do you mean, what's it like?
Well, I mean,
I'm going to reverse you on that.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So you do a bit of traveling, obviously, right?
Yeah,
you
I was in Jamaica.
Yeah.
I was in Jamaica back in February.
Right.
Did 2 talks down there, but they were more surrounding customer service, customer care. Last year I did a talk for Newfoundland Association of Technology Institute, NATI, in St. John's. There were 400 people involved in that one.
Right.
I spoke on a cruise ship a couple of years ago.
Wow.
That was pretty good. 15 things you should let go. Right, and I was invited to do that. That was pretty cool. I did Miami, right, once as a guest speaker. So it's amazing actually, because you get the same feeling every time I go to do one of these things. I want to run away.
Right.
Kind of like when I was in the parking lot just now. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, because like people get too tied up in the feeling of nervousness, because nervousness is no different than excitement. It's the same hormone, or I don't know what the scientific formula is or a scientific word is for it, but it's the same hormone that fires off in the brain that you come from fear.
Right.
Fear and excitement sometimes is just misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I remember last year when I did that talk at St. John's, and there was 400 kids, 400 grade 9s actually, and the lady said to me, you're going to lose them in about 15 minutes. So the talk was about 45 minutes long. And I said, what do you mean I'm going to lose them? She said, well, they're 15 years old. You just don't have their attention span. I said, well, maybe not. Maybe. I said, well, we'll just deal with that when we get there, right? Well,
You mentioned that, and I'm a big Elvis Presley fan, and I get that from my dad. And saying that reminded me actually of a thing that Elvis once told people. As famous as he was, every night before a show he'd be nervous. He had stage fright, and his response was always, just because the audience last night liked me doesn't mean this audience will.
Right, head trash again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So it was all up here.
I want them to like me.
Yeah. And
That's
you mentioned that earlier, and I think this is something you talk quite a bit about, because I've seen some of your videos on Facebook as well, and you talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah. Well, we get up in the mornings, and I'm a big believer in the what they call a success wheel. All right, you get up in the morning, and your outlook will usually be your outcome. All right, so you go in the mirror, you go in the morning. I'm going to look right into the camera for this, right? So you go in the morning, you look in the mirror, you're looking right straight at yourself, and you're going, oh my God, what a day this is going to be. Oh my, I got to do this, I got to do that. So you're starting on a pretty negative connotation or a negative mood for the day, right? So you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, right? So your outlook is, you know, like the day is going to be horrible. I mean, you look at the mirror or you look at the window and you say, it's snowing out. Can't believe it's snowing. Oh, God, it's going to rain. You know, it's only snow and rain.
Yeah.
You really can't change it, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people you should wake up in the morning when one foot hits the floor, say thank. When the other one hits the floor, say you.
Right.
Thank you. All right. And you know, whether you look up there or down there or out there or out there, it doesn't matter. Right? You're here for a reason. Right? What that reason is entirely up to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So your outlook gives you your beliefs or your judgment, sorry. Right? So your outlook gives you your judgment. You're going to judge how the day is going to go. And then your judgment will lead to your beliefs, and your beliefs will lead you to your actions, and your actions will give you your outcome.
Right. So you're
Right?
reversing.
So so it goes outlook, judgment, belief, action, outcome.
Right.
But if we spin the wheel backwards, and I brought this to Baltimore to our head office a few years ago, we spin the wheel backwards, you start with action. All right, your action now goes to your beliefs, it goes to your judgment, goes to your new outlook or your new outcome.
Right.
Start with action.
Yeah.
So when you wake up in the morning, say thank you.
Right.
Right? Start with something positive. Go in the mirror, look in the mirror, and say, you know, thank you.
Awesome.
Right? You know, just do.
And that's
do
absolutely
something
true.
different.
In fact, one of my favorite quotes from a famous Canadian art Linklater was that it is our attitude, not our aptitude, that will determine our altitude in life. Rob, I want to thank you for joining me. I really do. Unfortunately, our time is up. I'm sure we can talk.
Oh, we can talk all day.
Much longer about this. So hopefully, maybe in the future, we can have you back and we can talk a bit more about what your life is like now and where you're heading. Until then, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I want to thank Rob for joining me. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you.